Welcome everyone here to 4 Steps to Get My Spouse Back in Love with Me. This is our second workshop of the week. I'm Heather Cho and I'm here with Mark Johnston. How are you doing today, Mark?
Well, I'm doing really great. How about yourself?
Well, I'm a little under the weather, but we're here and we're excited to keep going
No.
here. And our last workshop was absolutely phenomenal. I was looking, Mark and I were going back and forth on the notes here for today's workshop on how to get your spouse back in love with you. And it just reminded me again of the wealth of knowledge that Mark Johnston possesses, and his level of expertise is just absolutely phenomenal. So I know a lot of you benefited from our communication toolbox workshop that we did on Tuesday. So thank you everyone who joined that, and congratulations to Miranda Faulkner, who won the first winner for our $10,000 coaching giveaway. Again, congratulations to her, and welcome everyone. Hi, hello, good to see you. Hi guys. Awesome. So just like on Tuesday, we are going to be giving away another membership for our coaching program today, live with you. You have already opted in to our giveaway list. I have the names here. And at the end of today's workshop, we will be selecting that winner. They need to be live. So if we select your name, let us know in the comments. We can see them. Good to see you. Awesome. Really excited for the workshop, excited for the giveaway. Really cool. Helps with mindset too. Yeah, we'll definitely go into that. And we're going to be checking the chat. So if we announce your name, that you're the winner, go ahead and let us know that that's you. And we will celebrate your prize today, your big win. All right, so I'm going to dive in here, and then we're going to get right into kind of the meat and potatoes that we're talking about. This is a workshop. This is like a full marriage type training. Mark and I were really wanting to give some better education out there about what to do when your spouse says they're not in love with you anymore, or maybe the feelings are starting to fade, or maybe they're even wanting out of the relationship. Maybe they're in love with someone else, or they're just saying, I'm just done. Maybe I need to find myself, right? All those different things that we hear. And so we want to get some clarity on exactly what to do to be able to get our spouse back. All right, so we're going to dive right in. Let me go over here to my slides. Can you all see and hear us okay? All right, awesome. Good afternoon, Thrivers. I love it. Such an awesome community. Okay, so I wanted to talk about darkness versus light. And yes, this is a little bit of mindset stuff, and I love analogies. I love stories. But many people, when they come to us, they talk about how much confusion there is, like the overwhelm, the fear. We often talk about getting into the panic mode of desperation when your spouse is pulling away, and that reaction is very normal and natural. However, if we stay there, then we only perpetuate the desperation, which only pushes our spouse further away. I know there's a lot of new members here and a lot of new people joining us, so this may sound new to you, but for some of the members that have been following us for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. There's that desperation mode that our spouse senses. And when you're around someone that's really desperate, really fearful, it causes them to pull further away from you, right? Instinctively, we just feel like we need to get some space. We need to distance ourselves. And so it only creates more of a gap between you and your spouse. And we definitely want to close that. But I'm going to compare that confusion, that overwhelm, and that fear. And Mark and I, there's been times in our marriage that have been really tough, and we've absolutely been there too. So I just want you to know we understand what that's like, those kind of heart-wrenching moments in our lives, and it can feel like darkness. About a year ago, my children and I went to this cave here. I don't know if you can see it very well in the slide, but this is called the Cave of the Winds, and it's just outside of Colorado Springs. And you can go on like a 45-minute tour into this cave, and you're in the cave for 45 minutes, which shows you just how incredibly vast it is. And you get to see the stalactites and the stalagmites. I still don't know the difference between the two, so forgive me for not being a science guru. But there's one part where you get really into the heart of the cave. All along the way, they've put up electrical lighting so that you can see really easily where you're going. But you get to this one nook, and they tell the story of some boys that got lost in the cave, and that their lantern went out, and they have everyone turn off their lights, their flashlights, their headlamps, and they turn off all of the pathway lighting, and you get to experience what true darkness is. I've never experienced true darkness until that moment. It was so complete and so profound. And they ask us all to be quiet and to experience true silence as well. But, I had I think 6 children at the time with us, so it wasn't true silence.
What, your kids weren't quiet? I don't know how that is at all now.
Exactly. They're like, Mom, why do we have to be quiet?
Yeah.
Okay, ruining it for everyone. Yep. And like this comment here, it does feel like darkness when there is no communication. It has been 3 days of no talking. And so to be in that profound level of darkness where there's no starlight, there's no moonlight, there's no electronic light. I mean, if you think about the darkness that we try to experience in the night or something, there's always some kind of light that's disrupting it or not making it true darkness. But to experience that was really profound. And the guide said that within 60 seconds to 3 minutes, the human brain will, in complete darkness, will start to hallucinate, which I thought was really interesting because the mind wants to grasp onto light so much that it will start to create its own images and its own pictures. And so as we sat in the darkness for just a minute and a half, I started to see what I thought were shapes and see what I thought were things. And when we're in that darkness, our mind starts to try to create some reason, tries to create some idea of what's happening to give us a sense of clarity. But what happens is if we aren't careful, we can get led into further and further confusion. And if we aren't careful, our fears could take us down really dangerous paths. Like if we're relating it to the analogy of being in this cave, take us down some really dangerous paths, thinking that we're seeing daylight when really it's just an illusion. And so what we want to share today, like that kind of feeling like being lost in that darkness, is that even the smallest amount of light always overcomes the darkness. And when we turned on our lantern, he actually lit a match and it was really bright and it was luminous. And even that tiny little spark of light overcame the darkness. And so what we want to do today, what Mark and I are intention to do with you here today, is to share some light with you today and help us move from some of the things that are confusing us, some of the things that are keeping us in fear, or maybe even potentially taking us down a wrong path when we think that we're doing the right thing, so that we can have clarity and we can have a sure guiding light to get us where we want to be with our spouse. Does that sound good? All right. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we do have a workbook that's going to be going along with this. So I do encourage you to listen and pay attention. Don't try to write everything down. If you're taking notes, you can get the workbook at the end. I'll post the link here of our guide of 4 steps to get my spouse back. So with that preface, we're going to go into some light here. And we want to talk about these 4 steps. Imagine you had 4 illuminated lanterns in this darkness of this cave that you might feel like you're in right now, a lack of communication, a lack of connection. And you had 4 guiding lanterns, 4 steps, 4 levels to be able to get back up into full daylight, meaning that you have your spouse back in love with you. We've talked about this before, but again, there's so many new people joining us. I really want to make this fact clearly known that 95% of people that Mark and I talked with have no idea why their spouse is leaving. And what happens is that they start to focus on the symptoms. And let's relate those to like the phantom objects that our minds are making up, right? Or they're really there, but we're fixating on the wrong things. And most counselors, most coaches, other programs, even books, and even well-meaning like pastors get this totally wrong, because they focus on those symptoms rather than the root issues of why those things are coming up in the first place. And then they start to exert lots of energy. And you might be in this stage where like, I'm making so many positive changes. I'm working so hard. I'm doing everything I can. And it just seems to be backfiring. It doesn't seem to be having an effect on my spouse. Does that make sense? Does that sound like where you're at right now? I see a couple of you. Yep, so true. Looking for signs, suspicions growing. Exactly. And these positive changes that you might be trying to make have no effect on your spouse. And so we want to show you a better way. After working with thousands of couples just like you, we've discovered something. I say it's insane because really no one else was talking about it before. It's kind of like everyone's following the phantoms instead of the real solution here. We stumbled upon it almost by accident, and it's truly been, after working with so many couples, and it's changed everything for our clients. It really has been a huge turning point for our program and in the results that our clients are getting. And that is that making positive change alone is not enough. It's not enough. And I know it might sound exhausting. You're like, I'm already working so hard. How can that not be enough? But rest assured, there's a better way. And it's this, that you must uncover and understand why they're wanting a divorce, why they say I'm not in love with you anymore, why those feelings of love have faded, right? Anything like that. So we really want to make sure that we're solving the root issues there. So these are the 4 proven steps to get your spouse back. And I just want to make this really clear, because you might be saying, like, I'm just in that darkness right now. I'm not really sure if this is going to work. And I want to give you that light, that spark of hope, because this is what we've seen happen, right? Couples that are even like, they're barely talking. We had someone just comment here that they have had 3 days of silence, 3 days of no communication, right? Your spouse might seem completely closed off. They're resistant to talking about the marriage. It's uncomfortable when you want to talk with them. It's tense. Maybe there's arguments. Maybe there's volatility, or maybe they're just really cold and distant. Or maybe you can talk about surface level things, but when it comes to the really important things, that's when you have a harder time. And so that's why step 1 is opening communication. And that's why we devoted an entire workshop on Tuesday to the communication toolbox. I'd love to see from you guys in the chat how you applied those conversation starters and how increasing understanding is helping. Oh my goodness, I'm looking up words.
Okay.
To open up communication for you. So I'd love to see that over there in the chat. All right, so I just wanted to paint the picture here that just like what you might be saying, that things are so closed off, they're so tense, we can't communicate, we don't have open communication, that our clients, these ones, Daniel and Russ and so many others, were in the same boat as you. They were not able to have more than a 2-minute conversation. They were not able to talk about things. And now we've been able to help them open up that communication through this first step. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to go into step 2, going further. Imagine that this is the next lantern ahead of us. This is the next shining light. I'm not going to take a lot of time, like I said, on the communication, because we just did the whole workshop on that. However, if you missed that, I really want to make sure you understand communication is always the first milestone.
So yeah, here's the thing. We were just talking about how sometimes changes doesn't have that huge effect that you're looking for, where you take care of all the symptoms and it doesn't really work. And so part of the reason why Heather was talking about opening up communication and actually uncovering some of the deeper problems in the marriage is because we actually need to adjust, those deeper problems. So for instance, it might be that you and your spouse have been arguing a lot, and your wife might be saying, okay, we argue, we just don't get along, it's we're not compatible. And most of the time it's not really just about arguments. There's a reason why the arguments are happening. It might be about disrespect, it might be about not listening to each other's opinions or needs. There could be a lot of other things, and those deeper level issues are what really need to be adjusted. So I mean, it's saying things here like, okay, maybe it's going to be about creating healthy boundaries. I know I've worked with many clients who, they come to me and they say, okay, my husband is leaving and he's saying it's all my fault, when really what needed to happen was my client, the wife in this case, needed to stand up to her husband and actually draw some firm lines in order to make sure that he was being held accountable for his actions. Maybe it's about how with other clients where the spouse who's leaving is saying, I never felt that love, or I haven't felt that love or connection in quite some time. And so we want to understand why. Why is that going on? What's preventing that from happening? Essentially, making adjustments, you're creating a foundation that could actually support a healthy relationship. So what this looks like. Let's go to the next slide here. Yes, this is the wondrous thing about doing this over the internet. Only one of us can control the slides.
And it's me, and I don't read Mark's mind, so we have to communicate.
Yeah, sometimes we'll have to do things like that. Like I was saying, there's some examples here. Like maybe the runaway spouse is saying, okay, nothing can change. And the thing is, if we can actually get underneath all this, when change happens, we can make it so that we remove that part of the argument. Now, this doesn't by itself fix the problems, but by making some changes, you start to form a foundation that could help support that healthy relationship. You start removing some of the the basis of their argument for leaving. I'm gonna, I want to give an example. So I remember a guy named Phil. Now, when I go into detailed stories like this, I always like to protect privacy, so I change the names and stuff with this. So Phil was involved in his family business. He was in a situation where he was really successful. And a lot of times his wife, Sarah, felt like she just wasn't as important as Phil's business or his family. So he'd go over and spend time with his family. They'd talk about business. She often felt like she was closed out of some of those conversations. And okay, so she wasn't feeling important. And for years, she held on to a lot of that resentment until it just built up and it exploded and she decided to leave. Now we could say, okay, here's the thing. Like we could say, okay, she didn't feel important. Let's make her feel important. And actually, Phil, when I first started working out with him, before he started working with me, I should say, he tried to do things like buying her flowers or trying to suggest getting out on a date, and she left in a huff. Like, why? Basically, why would you try to do that? So after working with us, I started suggesting maybe pulling away from the family business a little bit, and a few other changes that really demonstrated how important Sarah was. So he made some huge changes. He started going into business for himself. He actually talked to his parents about, how his wife had felt, and told them about how he's going to need to focus on the family a bit more. They were a close-knit family, and they were actually a bit upset with him. Oddly enough, I felt like that was kind of an odd thing, but these were changes that needed to happen regardless of what Sarah was going to do. And as a result, Sarah started questioning her decision to remain separated, and discussion about how to fix the relationship started up, a few weeks after that. But what he did is he made these big changes that were actually causing her. He started attacking the root, the things that were actually causing her to feel unimportant, if you get what I mean. So by doing that, something that was really difficult, it really gave her a lot of hope. I'm going to turn this over to Heather, then, I guess, for the step 3 here.
Right. And so here, Mark's talking about how we need to make some of these adjustments because it starts to get them to question their reasons for leaving, right? But we need to go even beyond that here into step 3, which is to change their narrative. And here is where your husband or your wife changes the story that they have created about you and the relationship. So they see the possibility of being happy with you again. And the really important thing to note here is that many other counselors, coaches, pastors, etc., they totally miss this. They'll say, just make these positive changes, and they don't teach you or show you how to help them to change their story. Now, I know a lot of you already get this and that you've been listening to us for a while, and you know how important it is to change their narrative, to change their story, as well as to change our own internal story, right? If you've been following us, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And many of you, when I asked what you wanted to learn about, you wanted to know how to do this. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into this step here and show you some examples of how we do this, because our stories, I mentioned my story was that internally, I just did not feel like I was worthy of love. Like I just did not feel like I was good enough. And that was something that was very subconscious. It wasn't a very conscious thing I was aware of, but internally I just felt that. And it would subconsciously cause me to self-sabotage, and it would subconsciously cause me to be always have a bit of a space, a bit of a wall between my husband, Ben, and I. And I never fully trusted him. I never fully opened up my heart to him, even though I loved him and I wanted to, even though I wanted that. And he actually never gave me any reason to believe that I shouldn't trust him. But that was my own internal block that was keeping me from really receiving his love, even his unconditional love that he showed me. And at one point in our marriage, I created a story, just like Mark was talking about here with our client, that he cared more about his family than he did about me. And the story might be they care more about the business than me, or they care more about this affair partner than me, or they care more about themselves than me, or whatever it is. And it could be something even completely different than that. I'm just using this as my own experience to share with you. So hopefully it can create an aha moment for you, and you can feel what resonates with you and like have that idea, that inspiration is like, oh, I get that now. I can see that. This is when we get some really powerful aha moments. Yeah, I'm unworthy because he cheats, right? I'm not good enough. That's a story that you're creating there, right? And a counselor just told me, accept it and move on. Right. Wow. Exactly. And so for me, I had to uncover the truth. And I only did that by first creating understanding for Ben that there were some actions that he was doing that made me feel like his family was more important than I was, but really it was a story I had completely invented, and it nearly led to the end of our marriage. And so there were things I needed to do to work on my own internal story, my own feelings of not being good enough. And then there were things that Ben had to do to show me that that story wasn't true, right? He had to show me that I mattered more, his family, and what the truth really was. And that was a process. It was an evolution. But let's go into, I'll turn back over to Mark here.
Yeah.
About how do we change their story, because this part is so important.
Yeah, this is, I saw a bunch of comments in the chat where people are saying, okay, I'm stuck at this step. I'm stuck at this step. Mm-hmm. And really, it is a difficult step, because, you know, it's a little bit easier if we, for instance, we had the other person, you know, involved in professional help. Really what I feel like is going on is, I'm almost looking at this in terms of like stages of change. And this is a term that it's used within counseling or coaching, where like, how ready is the person to make some changes? And it's a lot of the times it's your spouse that's really stuck on things like this. They're in this what's called like the pre-contemplation stage. They're not even contemplating that what they're doing is a problem. There's a lot of times that they're shifting it over your direction. They're saying, okay, I'm hurt. But it, you know, how do we change this? How I actually started, you know, looking into this, I was like, okay, well, how do the really influential people in the world, how do they convince other people to follow them? How do they convince other people to change their mind? How do the salespeople convince people to buy from them? How do, you know, what are all these influences, and how can we apply this to marriages? Now, you know, sometimes the business or the salesperson, it has to be something quick, but, you know, you have a little bit more of an advantage, most of you, in that you can have some very consistent messaging. Your problem, it's built up over a long time. And so Heather and I, you know, we put together something that I call home messages, a message that you keep coming back to over and over again, something that feels good and comforting. And, you know, if we can have a lot of that consistent messaging about what your intentions are, it can really remove a lot of the misunderstanding. Even further, and this is where we get into more like the business and sales sort of thing. Your spouse, if they are considering leaving the marriage, they're describing the problem in a certain way that is not helpful for the relationship. And the way we describe problems really shapes our opinion. So Heather, you're talking about how Ben, you felt like Ben's family was more important than you. And so Ben isn't doing this, he's not doing that, he's not taking care of me. You know, and I do the same thing with my wife. Jen at times, and she'll get really focused in on things, and I'll say to myself, okay, I guess I'm not important. I have to catch myself on things like that sometimes, when that's not really accurately what's going on. And so how we frame the problem, how we describe the problem, has a huge effect on our opinions about what's going on. So, for instance, my wife has been out in the yard the past week. She got really excited because we got a whole bunch of stuff to do some landscaping that she wanted to work on it herself. And I might have breaks throughout the day to go out and talk to her. And at first I was thinking, oh, she's not wanting to talk to me. She's just really focusing on, so I guess I'm not that important. I had to catch myself saying, no, here's just something that's really interested in. She's had some long days with the kids. And this is something that she needs, and she does care about me. And so I had to describe it differently. And this is what we need to do with our spouses as well. I imagine your spouse, and I'm seeing a bunch of comments on the home messages now. I know a lot of people are liking that. That is in part of our program. But your spouse, if they're leaving the marriage, they're saying, this is an unsolvable problem. This is all your fault. You're a terrible person. You can see that in the slide here. It's about balancing the narrative. There's probably problems in how they're describing it in terms of scope. Is this a really persistent, unsolvable, pervasive problem? Is it all your fault and they don't have anything to do with it? Or are you this terrible jerk? You've ruined them, and you've done all these terrible things. And yeah, I'm seeing some comments. Yeah, this was part of the live course. And I did go over this in really detailed depth there. But if you keep allowing the problem to be described in those ways, no wonder your husband or wife feels like there's no way to come back from that. And we can even balance this even further, or change the narrative even further, as we hold our spouses accountable for their own actions. And there's really healthy ways of doing that without it turning into a negative thing. So I remember Tom and Ashley, and once again, I change names when I go into really detailed stories. I don't want to embarrass people or bring their personal issues up. So Tom and Ashley, they are a couple. They are heading towards divorce. Tom had multiple affairs, and Ashley was constantly feeling insecure and hurt. So what would happen is they get into these constant arguments. We could have just sat there and said, Tom, you've had multiple affairs, cut it out. That wouldn't have gone anywhere. So they're getting into these constant arguments, and they couldn't even be in the same room a lot. The tension was all over the place. A lot of the blame, which I found really interesting, I see this a lot, especially oddly enough in affairs, a lot of the blame was placed on Ashley for not respecting Tom's privacy and not respecting Tom. In other words, the narrative was really negatively charged. She said, well, she's not respecting me. See, she's looking through my stuff without even realizing, hey, well, there's a reason why she's doing this. It's because you're having affairs. But anyways, the narrative was really negatively charged, and the scope, according to Tom, was the problems were pervasive, and the direction was all shifted towards Ashley. And when I started working with just Ashley, we got the arguments to stop through a lot of much more clear communication, and these consistently positive messages, the home messages that I was talking about. We ended up ending the current affair, and there's a whole bunch of steps even for that. And then Tom started joining in for a couple sessions, and from there, a lot of the discussion, interestingly enough, was about, well, at first Tom was blaming Ashley, but we shifted that to helping both of them see things from the other person's perspective, and holding everyone accountable for their actions. It started turning around as Tom started to see some of the things that he was doing was causing the problems that he was seeing from Ashley. So each liked to blame their behavior on the other, but it didn't really go anywhere. when that blame was happening. And once we were able to help them see their own contribution, the ability to solve some of these problems went a lot smoother. So I know that was kind of a big, long explanation, but changing the narrative is complicated. So let's take the last step here, Heather.
All right. First, I wanted to highlight one comment here of someone who has clearly been going through some of our programs. But my home message is, it's important to me to make you a priority. So these are just some of those steps that are so important along the way. The positive messages that we continue to reinforce is what helps to change our spouse's narrative, right? For me, it went from your family is more important than I am to I want to understand you. It was just that simple. I want to understand you. And then the golden question, what do you mean? I want to understand you. And creating that compassion and seeing it from each other's perspective, bridge that gap. And I saw that, the time he was spending with his family, it wasn't a threat to me. It's that he was needing support, and that his family is a great support to him, and that allows him to then better take care of me. And he does it because he wanted to take care of me. And so that just opened up everything for me. And it also allowed me to see that he was struggling too. And I think that's one of the most common things that we would see, right, Mark, is that both are struggling. And your spouse might be doing incredibly hurtful things, and they are struggling.
Well, what's interesting in what you said is a lot of times, especially at first, both spouses are usually meaning really well. They're not trying to hurt the other person. It's just they don't see it. Just like what you were saying there with you and Ben. He wasn't trying to make you not a priority.
Yep, it is. It is amazing when we actually get down to it that most of us human beings, we actually have really good intentions. It's just that these stories that we create about each other become these nasty monsters, and they take over. And when the two monsters meet, it's like end game. My kids are super onto the end game right now. So anyway, it's like the clash of the titans, right? And so what we need to do is put down the swords and build that bridge of understanding. So once we are able to do that, we identify what their story is. We identify what the root issues are that are going on, and we're able to make some adjustments through step 3, and then telling the new story and helping them to see the new story, to tell a new narrative, which is step 3. Then that brings us to the point here, step 4, with really getting our spouse back in love with us, to getting them back home with us, to getting our best friend back, our partner. I posted earlier in the group, and you guys told me how much you want that. I asked you, what would it mean to you to have a strong, happy, and thriving marriage? And you guys all told me it would mean the world to you. It would mean the world to your family, to your children, right? And that it's everything. You love this person. And so you want them back in love with you, and you want to have that happy, healthy, and thriving marriage. And so this is where things get really exciting, in my opinion. But we've proven time and time again, after working with so many couples just like you, whether there's an affair going on, or they just say, I don't love you anymore, or the feelings have faded, or they want out, right? Whatever is the messaging that they're sending you, that if we can slow down the process of divorce, separation, or just distance between you two, and we can gain 6 months of time, that the opportunity for your husband or your wife to fall back in love with you greatly increases. Yes, I can see it would mean the world. Absolutely. One step at a time. Yeah.
I'm going to point something out with this. This isn't just in general, hey, let's buy 6 months at a time without anything else. This is a step 4 for a reason. Mm-hmm. And all these other things need to happen for you to even be able to do this at all. But then all that foundation needs to be there for this time here to actually have an effect as well. So this isn't just in general, hey, let's just slow everything down, halt the process, and everything will be good. No, there's a reason why this is step 4.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So imagine if we're getting our way out of the cave, right? And we have these different lanterns, and maybe we're building a ladder to get up to the fresh air, right? If that ladder isn't strong enough to hold to get to this point, it won't last. And so that's why it's really crucial. One thing that Mark and I really emphasize is solving problems in the right order. Oftentimes, when your spouse is pulling away, you want to dig in deep. You want to like solve those root issues right now, and you want to like fix everything and talk about the really deep stuff. But it's not the right time to do that. And oftentimes, when you are trying to solve problems out of order, your good efforts and your good intentions will backfire. And that's why it's really crucial that we build step upon step, one piece of light and to the next and to the next and to the next until we're into that daylight. So thank you for that preface. So let's go into this and what it looks like a little bit deeper here, Mark.
Sure. I remember with Frank and Courtney here. So as sometimes happens, you know, when problems aren't coming out on the surface, resentment can build up over time. And so what ended up happening is Frank's wife, Courtney, she ended up leaving him suddenly. He was really surprised. He had no idea that Courtney was so upset. She, you know, within a couple weeks moved in with someone else that she had just barely met. I've heard things like this happen more than once. And it still kind of baffles me a little bit. But anyways, what ended up happening, so Frank was really surprised, and Courtney turned around. You know, Frank was expecting almost like an apology for like leaving, but no, she turned around, she's angry. She's blaming Frank for not feeling supported or loved. So she said, this other guy, you know, he makes me happy, and this is, you know, this is what I want to do. So Frank decided, okay, he started working with us. He decided to make some big changes. He made changes to his career. He made changes to his lifestyle so that he could be there. Even if he couldn't, you know, be around Courtney, he was going to make sure that he was going to be available to support and care for his kids and offer as much support as Courtney would allow. He became a really different person with his kids. The kids noticed that they basically said that he was a different person. And still nothing really happened. He made all these changes. He was talking to his wife and wanting her to see these things. Nothing really happened, but he stayed consistent, and this went on for like 5 months. Now, here's the thing. Statistics are not really in favor of affairs. The relationships from affairs do not, it's not very common for them to be lasting relationships. And in this case, same thing happened. The affair fell apart. And Courtney really started to open up quite a bit more towards Frank, dropped a lot of her hostility. He had been there, this consistent rock for all this time, and you know, had been there for the kids, had made some really big sacrifices, and you know, it took some time, but he had to build up that foundation first. Kim saying, "Oh, I finally get it. You were explaining this last night in the group," and yeah, here's the thing: is sometimes it does take some time of just having some consistency here before it starts to sink in for the other person. So even me myself, sometimes I'm a little bit thick in seeing my own problems, and it takes people sometimes up to 6 months to see some of these changes or some differences here. So with that said,
yeah, I just wanted to go over. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Just to this comment here from a little bit ago, I managed to delay her moving out, but I haven't been able to change her narrative yet. So what this shows is, first of all, I just want to honor you. I'm not able to see who made this comment here on my end with this BeLive platform, but first of all, it's incredible awareness. And so you're doing really good with being aware there and educating yourselves on what it takes to get there. And so being able to delay her moving out is a huge win. So really, congratulations with that. And the fact that you're recognizing that you haven't been able to change her narrative yet is okay. It means that like Mark said, there's this time here that you now have to be able to work on that. And it's going to take time, right? It's not an overnight process. We all wish it could be like the fairy godmother and have it just magically all come together really quickly. But it is a process. And so I just want to give you that encouragement that you're on the right track.
I'm also going to point out, you know, we're just as much as information as Heather and I are trying to give, this is a bit of an overview rather than a detailed, in-depth sort of thing. And these steps are really good, but if you're experiencing some difficulty, I mean, that's what we're here for. That's why we're, we offer services. There is absolutely a need to work, with people like us, so that we can actually figure out, okay, what's going on and why are people getting stuck at certain steps.
Exactly. We have another question here. How can you buy time after they moved out? So again, here you're kind of stuck at a certain step. There might be some of the things that you're doing right, but most likely one or two of the pillars aren't quite in place yet. But my goodness, I can talk. Very often, we're able to still get you there. And that is a process. So it's knowing where you're at and then what it's going to take to get going there. All right, we're going to go on to the next part here. All right, so I just want you to ask yourself, does this make sense? What resonated with you today? What made sense the most to you? And do you want to be able to have that time so you can have your spouse fall back in love with you? You know that would mean everything, right? I saw a lot of your comments that you just would love to have physical touch and closeness again. Just that security of being in each other's embrace, waking up to their embrace, have fun doing nothing at all. That's one of my favorite things, is like not having any plans with Ben, but just enjoying being with each other. Have late night talks, laughing again, have a happy ending to our love story. So I want to show you, actually Mark's going to show you a real example of this, someone just like you. And we really appreciate being able to share these kind of stories and appreciate those that are willing to share their story, because we learn from each other's stories. We learn from each other's examples. It's one thing for us to give a high level overview of like, do this, do that, do this, step 1, step 2, right? But for you to actually see what it looks like is really powerful. So tell us about Jenna and Nat. Of course, names changed again.
Yeah. So this is just like the brief overview. I'm going to give some spoilers ahead of time, and I want to then get into some more of the details. So when I first started working with them, actually, what ended up happening first was Matt was ready to file for divorce. He didn't really want to work on the marriage. He'd actually started talking to some other women, hadn't really gone very far. But the thing is, Jenna really wanted to save things, and she started working through some of our programs on her own. And there's a lot of progress, even just with that. We do have some kind of do-it-yourself programs, things that are a little bit less, where you're getting a little bit less support. But she started working through that because that's what she wanted to do. Saw a lot of progress, but eventually she did have to reach out to us. And right now, Matt's put his ring back on. He and Jenna are seeing a counselor together. Things are going well. They're planning their summer vacations. But I want to get into what actually happened here. So let's look at some of the concerns that were going on. So Jenna was really upset and started services because Matt was engaging in an emotional affair, like I had just mentioned. So he would be secretive. He wouldn't tell Jenna what was going on. He wouldn't talk to her about his feelings. He was really closing off because, when they would talk, Jenna was really upset with him because of this going on. Matt told Jenna that he didn't love her anymore. Just said, I'm not in love with you. And really, Jenna at this point felt stuck. Matt would complain when she wanted to fix problems, but would also complain when she didn't do enough. And I imagine some of you are feeling that bit of being stuck right there as well. I hear all the time, like where some of my clients start fixing some problems and their husband or wife is upset with them. Why are you doing it now? Why didn't you do it before? And it makes them more and more upset as they are trying to fix things. So here's the thing. These were like the surface level concerns. It was about an emotional affair. There wasn't any love, and Jenna felt like she couldn't do anything here. And I'm seeing some of your comments here. A lot of you are feeling stuck with this. So here's the thing, like when I started working with Jenna, she couldn't understand why her husband wouldn't talk to her at times. Had no idea, which was really getting in the way of doing much at all to fix this. She would come to me and she would be really upset. She was upset that Matt would turn to someone else instead of talking with her. He would go to this other woman to talk about problems, and she's like, well, why doesn't he just come and talk to me? And what I noticed right away is that Jenna wasn't really seeing things from her husband's perspective. She was just seeing things of like, how am I hurt? What are the things that Matt is doing wrong? How he's hurting me? And when we actually took away a lot of that judgment or blame, which was actually why he was closing off, it really allowed Matt to be a lot more open. From there, we were able to get through some more of these steps. So Matt was able to be more open. We were able to hear about more of the concerns about what was going on. It helped Jenna know what changes needed to be made. And then also going further, we were able to identify, okay, what are some of the things that we needed to hold Matt accountable for? Where were some of those boundaries that we needed to set? And so we had some symptoms here. And I know it's giving it away already. I was going to ask you guys what the symptoms were.
Yeah.
That's fine. We could have just said, Matt is being a terrible person. He's seeking attention outside the marriage. And I will always tell people that that's not a good idea. On the surface, we could say that was the problem. But if we just said, Matt, you need to cut that out, stop talking to other women, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. He would have resented. Actually, she had asked him to stop that, and he just felt like he was being controlled here. And so, the real reason for pulling away, what was his story? Matt, when we got right down to it, Matt didn't feel appreciated or accepted. And I want you to listen to that word there, that accepted. When Jenna would come in and talk about problems and complain, Matt felt judged, felt like he couldn't do anything right. So he worked really hard at what he was doing, but it would constantly be met with complaints, he felt. And he didn't want to be around someone who was constantly judging him. So he pulled away, and this other woman was there who actually appreciated what he did and was very positive towards him. And so we can see why everything was going on, and it wasn't just the affair. So that's kind of like the whole picture here. And do you see all the steps where we open up some communication? We actually find out what's going on. We make some adjustments, like taking away a lot of that judgment and blame and setting some boundaries. We start changing the narrative. In this case, it was a little bit, I'll admit, this case was a little bit easier changing the narrative once the actual changes started coming about. But we still needed to work on that because he was still saying that Jenna doesn't appreciate me, even though she was reaching out to do that. And then, because we were able to stop the affair and get everything, buy some time, it took a little bit time for everything to come together, but eventually it worked out.
I can see a lot of you in the chat saying, this is my exact story. This is my story. I can so relate to it. Matt is definitely my husband, right? So a lot of you are really resonating with what's being shared here. And so understanding, kind of going through and dissecting this in our workshop here, all the steps that it took to get to the point where now they're back together. Now they're happily working on the relationship together. And that the solution was to uncover what his reasons for leaving really were and increase Jenna's understanding toward him. Right? And so that is where we need to go. That's what we need to do here. And when we uncover what their true story is, that's exactly what our method is designed to do. So instead of guessing what's going on, right? Like Jenna was guessing at what was going on, you know what is going on. And you know exactly what to say, when, and how, which really just helps to take all the guesswork out of it, right? Imagine just removing all that darkness from your mind, all of that fear, like you're in that complete utter darkness way down deep in the earth. And now you have that exact guiding light so that you know exactly what to do. How good does that feel? I know for me, in the hardest moments of my life, when I felt confusion and I felt darkness, and it was terrifying to try to take a step forward, but just being able to take one step and then finding that there was ground there, and taking another step and finding that there was ground there, and trusting in the process that was given me by those that were experts. And honestly, my intuition, my core, like I just knew that that was the path I had to take, even if I didn't fully understand it. And it was just taking one step into the darkness, and then discovering that there was light there, and that there was solutions, and that there was hope. Right. And so that is the journey that we take you on. And that's exactly what our method is designed to do. And that completely removes all the fear, the worry, and a really easy way for you to naturally talk with your spouse again. I know we gave you those communication starters. A lot of you were mentioning that that is very helpful for you. And some of you are saying like that would sound inauthentic, and that's not what it is. It's having real solutions to build understanding. So like Jenna here, you can uncover why they're leaving. You can open that communication and ding, 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 increase understanding. You open the door for them to stop the divorce. You open the door for their heart to fall back in love with you, right? All right, so I know that was a lot. And again, this is just the beginning. We're about to announce our winner here in a little bit, but I just wanted to let you know that while we did an incredible job here, Mark did an incredible job of giving you guys some real value and some illustrations on how these principles work so that you can apply them to your situation. We didn't really get to go into, how do you set those boundaries, right? If you're at that stage and you're stuck in that kind of a block, then how do you do that without creating emotional distance? Because a lot of people are afraid to set a boundary that it will only push their spouse further away, right? That's a really common fear. And so you need to know how to do that, how to get your spouse to open up. We call them our 3 restoration shortcuts, because you don't have a lot of time, right? They're designed to help you optimize your time, to reconcile faster, restore hope for your marriage, even if it seems impossible. And then uncovering, there might be some traps in your conversation. There might be some things that are blocking you. Maybe they're even some of those subconscious beliefs that you have, like I had, that I wasn't good enough, and that I didn't deserve love, and that was a major block. And if I continued to live with that story inside of me, it would continue to show up on the outside again and again and again and again, until I finally addressed it and I finally healed from that, and I evolved from that to uncover the truth of who I am, that I am good enough. I am worthy of love. I can do this. I can receive this. And that's true of each of us. So it's getting to a state of being internally accepting that. So then we can receive that, and we can give that. We can have understanding for our spouse and connect deeply with each other. So without these, it's really difficult to reconnect with your spouse and have the truly happy and healthy marriage that you want. You may have 2 or 3 of the pieces, but if you don't have all, then you don't have like that really strong, healthy foundation that I know you really want, and I know that you're really craving. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, right? So I honor you for being here and being willing to seek solutions, to look for the light, to look for the truth that can guide you. All right, so now we're going to go into our giveaway of our $10,000 coaching giveaway of our PATH program. I'm going to go ahead and skip this. I know that you guys are all working on those things. You want to get your spouse back. You want to have security in your marriage, build a steady future for your family. You want your children raised by both parents in the home, and that doing so can feel very overwhelming, and it can be very ineffective. And a lot of you talked about how stuck you are. And so we want to be able to get you unstuck and so that it's not overwhelming, but you have clarity. And above all, you have that inner peace that is going to guide you, as well as produce the results that you're looking for on the outside. So I'm going to announce the winner of our giveaway right now. This is for our premium group coaching program. I have all the names over here on my random name picker screen. So if this is you, let me know. All right, we have Jennifer, and I have Señorita La Espina. It's your email, but I'm not going to give the rest of it. So Jennifer, if that sounds like it is you, let me know. So Mark, if you can go ahead and watch the comments here in the next little bit and see if Jennifer is on. And I won't give away your full email, obviously, but it starts with Señorita Laspina. So Jennifer, if that is you, let us know. And if you aren't on with us live, then we will pick another one tomorrow with our next workshop that we're doing. And I encourage you to come to that because that's Blueprint to Save My Marriage. It's looking at everything, going a little bit deeper into these steps and getting further clarity there. So congrats to Jennifer. All right, you won our giveaway. So why is this one-on-one coaching so crucial that Jennifer just won here? What you need is a plan of action. You need a system to follow so you can feel confident in yourself and how you communicate with your spouse. And like I mentioned earlier, solve problems in the right order so that it doesn't backfire, right? Solve problems in the right order. And our Path Marriage Coaching Program is different than therapy or any other self-help because it combines the proven step-by-step phases, which we gave you the high-level overview of them, but it shows you exactly how to apply them. If you're stuck, we go in deep and we figure out exactly what needs to happen to get you unstuck, to be able to reconnect with your spouse, to get them to open up communication, to establish healthy boundaries wherever you are along that spectrum, getting you the individual specific guidance that you need, as well as accountability to make sure that you're doing it and that you're doing it correctly, right? So that you can have those results that you want. So what happens is that you're coached by Mark Johnston and myself and our international marriage experts here at High Thrive Coaching to be able to make progress towards restoring your marriage, again, with that plan, accountability, and actionable feedback. And then we also do group coaching sessions where you're able to connect with other people just like you that are working to save their marriage. And, you know, Mark was talking about just last night, you were doing the group coaching session, and the people there, that we learn so much from each other. It's one of my very favorite parts of our program is that people ask questions that we didn't think to ask, and we'll learn from each other's experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so if you are wanting to know more about that, if you're wanting the specific guidance of marriage expert to guide you through the path, out of the cave, out of the darkness, out of the fear, out of the overwhelm, and you want the guidance to be able to follow these steps and apply them correctly so that your spouse can fall back in love with you, you can have your best friend back, you can have your lover back, you can have your spouse back, your partner back, then I invite you to join us over at highthrivecoaching.com/apply. All right, did we hear anything from Jennifer?
I'm not seeing anything. I'm trying to I tried looking up other things but you know, like people in our Thriving Marriage group, but you know, I quickly realized that was futile, as you know, there's a lot of Jennifers. So I'm not, and we don't have a last name.
No, so some people only put in their first name. So if we aren't able to hear from her within the next hour or so, I mean, I said to do it live. So if you're able to do it within like the next hour, then we'll go ahead and do that. But if not, then we'll have to just announce another winner tomorrow.
Another way to go about that, if Jennifer sees this, just message either Heather or I directly. You might need to send like a friend request for us to see it well. Or just, yeah, we would love to give it out to Jennifer, but yeah, we might give it out to someone else as well.
Yep, sounds good. Do it again. We will do it again tomorrow. We're going to give her a little bit of time, a little bit of grace. All right. Well, we appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us. Our appreciation and our love goes out to you. I want you to know that we are praying for you, that there is light, there is solutions, and there is hope for you, even in the midst of your hardest challenges, in the midst of your darkness or your confusion, that there is light there. And I hope that this has been of value to you. We deeply appreciate you all, and we will see you tomorrow for our Blueprint to Save My Marriage. All right. Thanks, Mark.
See you, everyone.